We're going to help you improve your commander decks by cutting a very specific type of card.
I'm Mia, and I like baking baked goods.
I'm BZ, and I like eating baked goods. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by, you guessed it, Card Kingdom. They're a brand new sponsor for the channel of 2024. We're going to be talking about them all year because, quite frankly, they're amazing.
We love Card Kingdom. We love buying from them. We love selling from them. And we'd love it if you used our link in the description below to tell them we sent you.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole thing where the more people we send to Card Kingdom, the happier they are with us, and then everyone's just going to be happy buying from the best seller and selling to the best seller and selling to the best buyer, and it's going to be fantastic. Also, we're sponsored by Dragon Shield because they, quite frankly, have the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
You could probably buy some on Card Kingdom. Wouldn't that be cool? But you can also go to the link we have in the description. That'll tell them we'll send you. You get a little kickback. You save 5% on your order.
If you use the code
Nerds.
There's going to be a Moxfield ad somewhere in the video. You can't guess where it is. If you said you did, you lied.
If you said you guessed, you lied. And we're going to get into the video. This is an interesting one because we were looking and talking about like qualities of certain cards and talking about improving our decks and some cards being bad in a lot of situations. So we mapped out the following 12 cards. And we're going to use a little thing called quadrant theory. This was formulated for like 1v1 limited, but we adapted it a little bit in Commander. It's just the idea that cards are at varying levels of good or bad throughout the game. So we're talking about the developing stages, which are like early turns of the games, turns 1 through 5, the parity stages, which is like building into a board stall or rebuilding after a board wipe. Then there's winning. That one's pretty easy. If the game is progressing as it is, you're going to be winning. The losing is if something doesn't change, you're going to lose. You're facing down some kind of huge threat. There's an arch enemy at the table. It's not you. You're in trouble.
Not every card is created equal, but the cards we're going to be talking about today are falling into a win more / overkill type of category. They basically said that if you're not winning the game, these are not as good as they could be. We're going to plot them in the quadrant graphs as we were talking about earlier, and we're going to explain why we don't play them and how we think they weaken your deck overall. The first card we're going to be talking about is Fiery Emancipation. 6 mana, and it says that if a source you control will deal damage, it deals triple that damage instead. In the first part of the game, the first 5 turns, it is completely uncastable. You just can't get enough mana to put it on the board, and if you did have that mana, it's better used somewhere else. In a parity or a board stall, it's not that bad considering it can push the damage over to get you into a winning position, but building after a board wipe, it might be a little bit rough. If you're winning, it's absolutely great considering you'll be dealing triple the damage and you have a lot of damage dealers that can utilize this card effectively. But if you're losing and you don't really have a board, it's completely useless because you're not going to be able to have anything to deal the damage with.
Yeah, we're going to talk about these cards in a general sense. Fiery Emancipation to me is one of the classic, biggest poster children for overkill pretty much in the whole format. A lot of cases you don't need to triple your damage, so a lot of people know this one, so I thought it was a good one to start out with. Yeah, like Mia said, it's kind of like a checkered little quadrant here because in developing the first 5 turns you're not really casting this, and it's not really the strongest opener. It doesn't really develop your board because you want a board state before you play this, so you can take advantage of it right away. Parity is where it really starts to shine because if everyone's board states are even, your creatures deal the most damage. There is a slight downside of, hey, if everyone's got a bunch of creatures on board, how are you going to break through? Just having, your 1/1s basically be 3/1s and your 3/3s basically be 9/3s doesn't mean you're going to get through damage, but anything you sneak through is going to be extra. Winning, like Mia said, this is where you want it, right? You got flyers or something in the air, you crash through for a bajillion damage instead of 10 damage. And then, of course, losing, you don't even want to see this card. When you're behind, you really feel it. And this card does nothing to catch you up. It just says, hey, you can deal a bajillion damage with the creatures that you hopefully have in play.
I wouldn't put this in a deck because I would be so disappointed to draw it every single time unless I was completely winning and the next turn I would just swing out for the win. It's a dead draw most of the time, unfortunately. I can see it having specific synergies in certain decks, like if you have a lot of creatures that ping to deal 1 damage and then you need it tripled for things like the Doctor Who cards that say 3 or more life lost or something like that. But other than that, in very specific cases, I don't see this as a very playable card.
Yeah, this is good if your commander is 7 power, like a Maelstrom Wanderer deck is classic, because you can play Maelstrom Wanderer, cascade into this, or have this out, then play Maelstrom Wanderer, and just kill somebody with 21 commander. That's definitely a corner case. And I would say winning is where this card shines. It is very good when you're winning most of the time. Sometimes, though, when you're winning and when you're at parity, it's not good if you can't get through damage. So this is a card we look at and we see this category of card and we just cut it from our decks. We try to fill a little bit more of the quadrant or the spaces that we do fill. We want to fill it a little bit more than this one does. This one says you're probably winning a game if you play this, and you're probably breaking parity if you play this, but not definitely.
I can think of a lot of better things to do with my 6 mana. The next one is Well of Lost Dreams. For 4 mana, you get an artifact that says when you gain life, you can pay X or less, where X is the max amount of life you've gained this turn. And then you could draw that many cards if you pay that mana. Well of Lost Dreams usually goes into life gain decks specifically, or like things that are revolving around extort, or just things of like that nature where it can gain a little bit of card advantage. However, it's 4 mana to come down, so you're not getting it down super early, and then you also have to have the mana after all of your spells resolved when you're gaining life to actually draw the cards.
Yeah, I have not been impressed with this card. In the developing stages of the game, I think it's really impossible to trigger this. You could say that it's okay if you want to get it down during the developing stages and sort of give up a bunch of tempo by playing a do-nothing, and then like several turns later start to accrue your card advantage. I have not enjoyed this in the developing stages. It has felt like a dead card in a lot of like my opening hands.
I've had it be a dead card too. It came in the old Edgar Precon, so that's where I started playing it, I guess. And I was always disappointed to draw it, considering I just had better things to do with my mana. And it's just such a dead card if you can't gain life, or if you just don't have the mana to spare. It's just a 4 mana artifact that says, maybe it will use me next time.
Yeah, so I feel like in the developing stages, it's bad because you just don't have the mana. When we move on to the parity stages, where we're either in a weird board stall or I'm trying to develop from a board wipe after that, that's where I think this is like the best mode for the card. If the game is Dirtle City and nothing's happening, you can go, all right, trigger my Soul Warden, pay 1 to draw a card. All right, extort you, pay 3 to draw 3 cards, and start getting the card advantage while nobody can break through. I'm glad to have a card that's good in parity or helps me rebuild, but if you look at the rest of this board, the rest of this quadrant thingy, whatever we're calling it, it doesn't really help you at any other point in the game. It depends. Like when we're talking about winning with Well of Lost Dreams, if I am winning, I have a winning board state. If the game continues, like how we defined it, if the game continues as is, I'm going to win. So I just need to find a way to push over the top. Drawing this card while you're winning is basically a blank. You want something to help you close the door. This is like, hey, invest 6 mana and you'll draw 2 cards if you can also gain 2 life. And we're just like, I'm trying to end the game, not extend it and say, in 3 turns I'm going to have so many cards.
It's a lot of hoops to jump through, especially when you're looking for that finisher at the end of the game. So it's a big maybe if you can't actually just draw the cards that you need to finish off your opponents. And when you're losing, obviously it's really bad. If you're not getting life, you're not going to be triggering it. If you don't have the mana, you're still not going to be triggering it. So it's going to be sitting dead on the field. And that's where I've seen this card be the most of the time. Just people don't have the resources to put into it when they're gaining life.
Yeah, there's obviously other factors into what makes a card good versus, how often it is good or what quadrants it is good in. But we're going to talk about these. I think it's a good way to talk about these cards. And just like when you're losing, the more pressure you're under, the harder it is to pay mana. So you've got these cards on your deck, like Well of Lost Dreams and Fiery Emancipation, that are like, hey, if your commander's out and you untap with your commander and you untap with this, you're living the dream. You're definitely winning. You're in a great position and your deck's going to hum. And then we're asking the question, hey, what can you do for me for the rest of the game? And most of these cards are like, well, is there a complete and utter board stall? No, I don't know if I can help you.
Some of these cards are very good in niche cases, as we talked about with Fiery Emancipation, and some of the other ones we'll talk about later, but most of these are just not as good as the amount of decks that they're in.
Next up, I think we got another classic win more type card. It's Crucible of Fire. It's 3 in a red for an enchantment. Your dragons get +3/+3. That's a big boost for 4 mana. There's usually like this. The going rate is like 3 mana for +1/+1 to all your creatures. And that's usually bad. I think that's a pretty bad card in Commander. I wouldn't play that. So this is like 1 more mana for +2/+2. But we also have to contextualize it. Your dragons get +3/+3. What are dragons? Usually 4 to 8 mana flying creatures with powerful abilities that either trigger as the game goes on or right away when the dragon enters or attacks or something. So like, do I need those cards to get +3/+3? I mean, we can quadrant it, graph it, but that's just my initial thought.
I definitely agree. I do run this in my Vrondis deck, but the reason I run it in there is because the tokens are being made for free.
How much are you paying per token?
Yeah, 0 or maybe a couple, but they're already stapled onto effects that I would already need, like rolling dice. So it's not as bad. But if you're paying the full cost for all of your dragons, and that's not counting if you just have like Urza's Incubator out and you're saving a couple mana here and there. If you're paying the full premium for dragons, this is still a big mana investment to get those stats onto them. In the developing phase, it's completely useless. You're not putting this down for 4 mana in the beginning of the game.
I don't think you're happy if you are. I mean, you certainly can, and it might set you up for future turns, but it means you're doing stone nothing. You're going to play a dragon maybe next turn. That one dragon's a little bit bigger, but even if that dragon gets a chip in or something, I don't feel happy with how I've used that mana when I could be ramping and sort of like applying a discount to my future dragons by having more lands in play.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because that's saying if you put it down turn 4, then play a dragon, it doesn't have haste, just wait 2 turns and then I'll be able to swing for 3 more damage. That's a really bad rate.
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of board states where you have 3 or 4 dragons, and this card would help you break through where you couldn't before. So the parity, we have it as like green, as positive, but sometimes just having dragons is enough to break a board state. So I'm still a little iffy on whether or not this card will break parity, or whether or not I want to follow up if a farewell choosing all modes with Crucible of Fire. I think I'd rather just play any dragon in my deck.
Yeah, I really do think it depends on the dragon deck itself, but if you do have a more stereotypical dragon deck like the Dragon, there are a lot of effects stapled onto the dragons themselves that can be more useful. So I would just add another dragon in, or a cost reduction to those dragons, so you can get more use out of the theme that you have to begin with. When you're winning, I mean, this is great. This is just extra stats in the air. It kills your opponents a lot faster.
It can actually close the door. If you maybe you have a 2 or 3 turn clock on the table, this can make it a 1 or 2 turn clock. It does add power and toughness. So if you are already winning and you're about to attack and you draw this, you kind of go, all right, and then you play it.
Yeah, we can completely understand why people put it in their decks, but it's not good at every phase in the game, especially when you're losing. If you don't have a board, this just sits there dead. It's just, what are you going to give stats to at this point? Nothing.
Yeah, if you're losing, this is a blank piece of cardboard. And don't think that every card when you're losing is a blank piece of cardboard. We're specifically choosing cards that when you are losing are a blank piece of cardboard, and they say when you're winning you win more. That's like why they are called win more. But this is the little section of cards, the overkill section, where when you're losing they are not there for you. These are fair weather Magic cards. They're like, how are things going? You're winning? Well, let me stroll on in. Oh, you're losing? I have an appointment. I'm going to be out of town.
The next fair weather friend we have is Assemble the Legion. 5 mana at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a muster counter on it, and you create a 1/1 with haste for each muster counter on it. Now, this is one of those things where it's a big maybe for most of these quadrants.
This is a weird graph.
Because it depends on how early you got it down. If you can keep it down on the board and then it has a ton of counters and you're making a big army, that's great. But depending on where you draw it and where you put it down, it can be even bad when you're winning.
Yeah, so we're going to start with developing. Developing is the first 5 turns of the game. I put it as yellow because normally I think this card's pretty bad in the developing stages of the game. It doesn't really, ramp you into too much. It is a slow card to get going. But I'm also thinking, when else am I supposed to play this card? If I want to get to a winning board state where I have this at 7 counters, I have to play it on like turn 4. But that still feels bad because I'm giving up so much tempo by essentially producing nothing.
Yeah, you have to just wait for it to sit down. Just you wait until I get 5 counters on here and I get 5 1/1s with haste. So I can see why it's yellow, but you want to play it then, but you can just do better things in the first 5 turns. Parity is the same thing. If your board is stalling, it'll give you the time to put on counters, and it might be good after a board wipe if you have a lot of counters on it, because then you can build a board faster than everyone else. But if the board was just wiped and you draw this, it's just another just you wait until I have 5 more counters on it.
It's from the makers of Just You Wait Till I Untap Next Turn, because this is Just You Wait Till I Untap 5 times, and even then, I'm assuming you're going to be untapping and having some kind of payoff like Krathar's Crusade, to where your 5 tokens actually do something and are not just 1/1s. But yeah, we talked about winning. That's kind of where people envision this card, when I'm winning. At this point, we would have to assume that winning means you played this card in the developing stages and it was bad, and you sat there and waited, or maybe you got a few proliferates in and you waited like 4 turns, and then you get 7 dudes and you start overwhelming people one at a time, or you have some other better finisher card that can wipe them out alongside this. But that's half of the battle. The other half is I'm winning. I need to close out the game. Draw for turn. Assemble the Legion. I might as well just throw it in the garbage.
I don't want to play this when I'm winning. It doesn't boost my damage over the edge. And if I only have a couple turns to close out the game anyways...
It's useless.
This is waiting until I untap. No, I want an effect right now because that gives my opponents more time to actually win. And that's putting me behind at that rate.
Yeah, so obviously, I don't even know if it needs to be said that this card is abysmal when you're losing. You don't want to play it. You don't have the mana to play it because it doesn't impact the board. It won't even really impact the board next turn. You can't afford to put time into this when you're falling into death.
Especially if you're like 2 turns away from death. You put this out and then you're like, next turn, I'll have a 1/1 and then you'll be sorry.
Yeah, best case scenario, that's a jump blocker for 5 mana and a turn. Next, we got Rhea Dawnbringer. There's a 9 mana angel, and you reanimate something every one of your upkeeps. So, like, just you wait. If I untap with this, I can start slowly taking over the game. The problem with 9-drops is if you draw them in your opening hand, it's basically a mulligan. You're going to assume that you're not going to access this card anytime soon. Maybe there's things where you can discard it and reanimate it, but that's not playing Rhea Dawnbringer in the first 5 turns.
Yeah, I used to have this in my old Kalia deck, like stock EDH recommended only, and even cheating it out for, free, basically. It wasn't that good because you have to have a graveyard where things matter in it to bring them back, and then you also have to wait till upkeep, which is a long time to wait when there's 3 or more other players.
That's funny. That's one thing we hear a lot about Shieldred, is people are like, well, I'm not casting Shieldred for 7 mana, the Whispering one. I'm not casting it for 7 mana. I'm reanimating it on turn 3. And then I even go for them. It's like, yeah, but what are you doing for the first 2 turns where you're filling your graveyard to have Shieldred in it, reanimating it, and then you have other stuff in your graveyard too? It's like, that's some kind of nut draw that I don't really think is the standard. So Rhea Dawnbringer I really don't think is going to be out in the developing stages, or good in the developing stages. It's going to be a liability.
It definitely won't be good because you won't have enough in your graveyard to actually bring back anything impactful. When it's parity though, and there's a board stall, it can be really good considering it's a big beater in the air and you can get things and build a board faster than the rest of your opponents because you're doing it for free.
Yeah, if you're the first one to rebuild after a board, this is an okay play. I think it's pretty solid. It lets you say, all right, I've put a big creature out. Yeah, there's a little bit of target on it, but if I can untap with it and I can survive with it, I'm really going to start snowballing because no one has that many resources, and this can generate a decent amount of resources over time for free, and without a second board wipe, can take over. Now, that to me is not a very compelling argument to play this card, but there's no denying that when the game is slow, this will start giving you card advantage.
Rhea is also one of those cards that I consider in the old Magic type of cards because this isn't adapted for things like Farewell. 9 mana for this card is not a good rate in today's power creep, and the fact that people can exile graveyards very fast and board wipes do not just destroy anymore. They're not just wraths. This was really good in the day of the wrath, but it's not as relevant anymore when people can exile your graveyard and your creatures.
Yeah, we have it as yellow in the winning category. We don't even put it as a slam dunk game closer. When you draw this card as you're trying to close the game and bring down the hammer and kill people, this is just like an IOU. It's like an IOU for a win con because you're going to play this. Then you're going to have to untap to reanimate some kind of big beefy creature. And if that thing doesn't have haste, you have to untap again. And I just go, well, if I'm winning the game and I have Rhea in play, all right, welcome aboard, happy to have you. But if I have to cast this, I feel like I'm being slowed down when I'm trying to close the game out as fast as possible.
It has the energy of, please don't touch this until my next turn. I would really like some value for my 9 mana.
You know what it is? It's hey guys, if you're looking to make up that tempo you lost earlier, here's your chance, because I'm about to spend 9 mana on a 6/6 flyer.
It's such a bad rate nowadays. It's just old Magic, and losing, it's completely abysmal. What if you don't have anything in your graveyard? What if that's the only creature you can put out, and they have an army of creatures? Okay, 1/6/6 in the air,
right,
and you just have to wait till your upkeep to get one thing back. That's a terrible rate.
Yeah, it's not putting creatures in play. It's not wiping the board. It's not removing things. It's not catching you up on life total. It's really just there, she's not going to be an asset when you're losing the game. Next, we're going to go to an entirely different type of card. This is not a 7 mana play. This is Hunter's Insight. It says you target a creature, and when it deals combat damage this turn, you draw that many cards. So if you target a 3/3 and you hit somebody for 3, you draw 3 cards. We're going to start with a developing stage. This is definitely a card that people play a lot in green decks. What was it in, like 80,000 decks?
It was 80,000 and or something like maybe even 88,000. Just way too many, more than it's deserved. And it's kind of just okay in the developing phase. I guess it's good for 3 mana if you can chip in 3 damage and then, target that creature, but it's so easily disruptible that I really hate it. If they flash in a creature and we're holding this up and they block with it, you don't get that. If they target the creature and kill it, you won't get it, and they'll just fizzle the spell. And if only 1 damage goes through, if you have like trample or something, you only get 1 card for 3 mana. That's a terrible rate, and I think there's so many parts about this spell that have to go right for you to actually get the effect that you want.
Right, and that is true no matter what phase of the game you're in, but in the developing stages, I don't know of too many board states in the first 5 turns where I'm sneaking in 3 damage with 3 mana open, so I put this as a maybe. If I can do that, like I can definitely see there's some decks that play a 3/3 early, and then on turn 3 or 4 can play this and draw 3. And like that's a pretty good scenario. It's about as good as you're going to get with this card in the first couple turns. But I can also see it being a liability if you're just going to play a Rampant Growth and then like an Oracle of Moldiah and wait around for your 6/6 trample. This does almost nothing. So we have it in the middle.
I think if I want card draw, I'd rather just play like Harmonize or something, because at least that's guaranteed. It's not, kill your creature, okay, just 3 mana, do nothing.
Right. How about at parity? If there's a board stall or you're rebuilding from a board wipe?
Oh, it's absolutely awful. If you can't sneak in the damage anywhere, then it's not good because it's just sitting dead in your hand. So if there's a board stall, you can't sneak in damage, so it's going to do nothing. And if you don't have creatures and you're building again, it's just that, just you wait until I untap and can get damage through and have the 3 mana to spend.
Yeah, it's the last thing you want to see off the top after a board wipe. You go, where were you like 2 seconds ago? But 2 seconds ago, you might not have even had free attacks. Now, when you're winning, and when you have an advantageous position, when you have a 6/6 trampler that's going uncontested, this thing's going to look like the best card in the world. It's going to look like Ancestral Recall on steroids. It's going to say that you attack for 6, you play a pump spell maybe with some whatever your commander's effect, and then you draw 8 cards, and you do something really, really cool, or you give a double strike, and then you draw twice as many cards. That's where I picture this card, putting the stars in everyone's eyes. They go, whoa. That's awesome. And it can do that, especially when your commander gives evasion or something.
It's just that one time where you give it to like an Eldrazi or something that you snuck in with Sylvat, you're like, well, why doesn't everyone play this in every green deck? They can, and it's only 3 mana? That's amazing.
The other people are living in the other 3 quadrants.
But I would not play this because it's just so easy to fizzle. And losing, if you don't have a creature that can sneak through damage, then it's just useless, just like in parity. So why would you play it? It's probably not good in most of the game.
Yeah, if you can't afford to get aggressive and send creatures sideways, then you can't ever even cast this. Something interesting we saw in this quadrant article was how easy each of these quadrants is to fill. The one that's the easiest to fill is winning, because when you're ahead already, that's great. That's the best position any Magic player could be in. Most spells that are supposed to be in your deck that are going to do what your deck wants to do are good when you're winning. But it's kind of surprising that some of these actually, despite being Haymaker-esque or looking big and flashy, are not even that good when you're winning. So these are the cards we kind of look at and we just go, man, that's an empty quadrant, and we don't play them as much.
I think people are very idealistic when they build their decks, and so
it's fun to be idealistic. Yeah,
everyone wants to pack in all the win cons. This would be so cool, but you got to eat your veggies too. You got to have enough lands. You got to have your card draw spells, and if you're not always going to be winning, in fact, in Commander with 3 other opponents, you're not going to be winning most of the time.
Yeah, I am very interested in the cards that fill that losing quadrant, of which there are 0 on this list.
But if you want to talk about a winning strategy, we're going to talk about Whatnot. We actually have a stream going on Saturday, January 13th at 3 p.m. to celebrate Ravnica Remastered. We're going to be building a deck out of a booster box, and we're going to be giving it away.
One of you who are watching and tuning into that stream will win a super sick nasty deck that we build, and then during the entire thing, while it's all going on, we're giving away collector boosties, aka collector boosters, but we like to call them boosties because they boost your morale.
We're really, really excited. We're going to be able to chat with everyone and hang out, and this is it's going to be free product for people who enter the giveaway and win.
If you like free stuff, I would recommend being there.
Come hang out. Moving on to another card that was recently reprinted is As Foretold. Basically, you put it down and you wait for it to get counters on upkeep. And for the amount of counters that is on it, you can cast a spell for free. So it starts at 0, then goes to 1, etc. The problem is that you have to, it's another one of those cards where you just have to wait, and if you don't have those proliferate synergies, it's a just you wait until I'm 4 turns in and I can cast a forge off for free, and that's still a really bad rate.
There are a small portion of decks that we have to exclude from this. If you're trying to cast Wheel of Fate or, the inevitable betrayal for free as soon as you play As Foretold, that changes where this ends up in your quadrants. So map that separately. We're going to talk about it just as a general card, or if you're trying to proliferate, like those kind of decks where in the developing stages, I feel like that's where this is in the sweet spot. It's not a ton of mana. You're not going to get anything out of it immediately, but if you can cast a 1 or a 2 drop the next couple turns, it will pay itself back. So in the developing stages, early on, I think that's where you got the green light to deploy this.
Especially if you're playing like a Simic deck and you can get like a couple mana dorks for free. That feels really good. That way you're ramping faster than everyone else. But if you're going into a parity board state or you're trying to rebuild, it might not be the best. If you're just drawing it and putting it down after the board just got wiped and has 0 counters and you don't have a bauble in hand or something, you probably won't be too happy.
Right, but if there's a board wipe, a Wrath of God, and this thing has 4 counters on it, then you can start cheating mana and saving it. So that situation, it's pretty okay. But in the other situation where you draw it, it's horrendous. And I think I want to pay a little bit more attention to when I draw it, because the parity situation, the first board wipe of the game, I don't know how many cards you're looking at up until that point. And I don't think it's that many, so I think you're more likely to find this than you are to start with it.
Yeah, I think so too. When you're winning, it's another consideration of how long has this been out. If you're winning, you can snowball even faster with a bunch more free spells, but if you draw it when you're winning, it doesn't affect your board state.
And you would wish it's basically anything else, a ham sandwich. I just would like a random removal spell to remove a blocker. I would like a random combat trick that's not even in my deck. I would take a giant growth over this most of the time when you're trying to close things out and win, or a combo piece or a ritual. And you just look at it and you're like, okay, not today. And then losing. Do we need to say why a 3-mana do nothing is bad, when you're behind? We're not going to beat a dead horse. This card is very bad when you're losing, and no one's even saying otherwise. No one's saying, hey, this will catch you up, but we got to graph it.
I mean, it's like a sale, right? Everyone's eyes light up when they see the word free.
It's like 30% off, but it's a $200 backpack or something.
Yeah, but this is a 3-mana investment that says you could cast Mishra's Bauble for free, which you could have done anyways.
Yeah, the first turn. All right, we'll move on to the next one. This is one like we especially have like
disdain for.
We just never play it. We're not gonna hate you if you play it, but it's Black Market. It's a 5-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature dies, it gets a counter, and it's your pre-combat main. You get black mana for each counter on it. When you're developing the board, when you're trying to get your feet under you, ramp a little bit, get into your big plays, I don't think this is going to be very useful. It is 5 mana. Playing this on turn 5, I think, is pretty rough, pretty dangerous. You risk losing tempo. You don't know if you're going to get paid off anytime soon. That's just kind of what the card does. If creatures aren't dying for something, or people know that this is out, which they will because it's out, and they want to maybe sacrifice creatures a little bit less, or maybe they won't fire off that kill spell until they find a naturalize. It just won't be at its best when you're developing. I think it's in the red.
This card is one of those cards where it comes down right before the farewells usually, or anything that destroys enchantments, and I've seen it get swept up really fast after playing it, where people have maybe gotten a couple mana off it, but not even the 5 mana that they've paid into it. So It's just a bad rate overall, and I really think that with more exile effects running around and people being able to play around it, it's one of those things where it can be a real big do nothing, and then it could get swept up in an enchantment-esque board wipe.
Yeah, now we're moving on to parity. This is probably something that we're going to mention in an entirely different video, but we play a lot of cards that are like 3-for-1s, or they do something for each opponent. So like destroying a permanent for each opponent, or each opponent votes, like with Druid of Purification. Druid of Purification and those types of cards eat this thing for breakfast. So in a typical board stall where people are like jockeying for position and playing removal, I don't see this personally live at all. But I think where this is performing for people is in the board stalls, or as after they're developing from a board wipe. If this is already out, a board wipe will fuel this into crazy mode where you've got 38 mana from it. That's great. And if you replay it and the game's going to take another 8 turns, this could still be good after a board wipe. And I think that's where it's performing for people. I just don't think for us that's the case, but I still wanted to give it a green.
It's not where I want to be, because even if I choose to wipe the board a lot, and I'm playing like a Zurgo deck, and I have just a lot of board wipes, I just keep wiping the board constantly and not letting anything stick, I still have to wait until my first main phase to get that mana. That's a lot of time where people have the time to see how many counters are on it and then find the removal if necessary.
Right, you'll go from 0 to 8, but you won't get the 8 until your next turn, so there is still a window. When you're winning, again, if you have this in play, correctly and you've done the work to build it up to 6 or 7 counters, then it'll be great because you can play your other winning spells and slam the door on the game, draw some cards, break through the board, kill some people, play an Exsanguinate, something like that. But if you draw it off the top, it is the Ace of Spades. It will do nothing for you. It is an old maid. It's a go fish.
This is one of the cards where it did also come in the Edgar Precon, and I tried it in one other deck a long time ago. It was basically one of the cards where it either was a 5 mana, put it down, and it got swept up in something, or it had 40 counters on it, and I was just like living the dream, playing everything in my hand and couldn't keep a hand because I had so much mana to spare. But I think that edge case of it being really good is what people had, have their eyes on, and they're like, well, it was good for me once. Well, how about the rest of the times where it was a dead draw?
Yeah, I think if we can minimize these types of cards where they're fantastic when you're winning and awful when you're losing, and shift it so that we're playing more cards that can catch us up or have that fill a little bit more of the harder squares in the quadrant to fill, that's what I'm looking for. We can get into another video about what cards are going to fill the most quadrants and don't necessarily just rely on being good when you're winning, which most cards are. So yeah, black market when you're losing, just forget about it. We're going to go to Door of Destinies. This might be a surprising one. ETB, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of that type, gets a counter, and then your dudes of that type get +1/+1 for each counter on it. Developing, that's what this is all about. Every creature type deck, every kindred deck wants to play this on turn 3, and if they ramp into it, and then just go creature, 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 and it's like a coat of arms.
This is one of the cards where you need a deck that's very low to the ground to make this really shine, considering this is 4 mana, so you want to play it turn 3 bare minimum. But if your deck is filled with a bunch of haymakers or 4-drops or 5-drops,
if you're dragons or something,
yeah,
you don't want this.
You're not going to be able to get the counters on it that are really necessary. You're going to be playing 1 or 2 creatures per turn, and they get +2/+2 each, and then if they get removed, it's like, okay, I chip in for 2 extra damage. That's not a good rate.
Yeah, so this is sort of you lose some tempo in the beginning, but if you play it in the beginning, it's very much worth it because it'll pay you off, and your creatures will end up with +6/+6 if this isn't answered. At parity, we're a little iffy. If you have to start this in the middle of the game, forget it. This is a card that is kind of only good in the beginning of the game, and it's why we never really play it. It's got a different graph than everybody else. Its peak is like immediately in your opening hand, slam it down, and then it's going to have to be answered or you're going to win the game. That's usually how it goes. But then at parity, if it's already in play, sure, that's kind of what we mentioned where you played it in the beginning of the game, and now you're taking advantage of it. But as soon as you draw it after like turn 6 or 7, you're just sad. You're like, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't going to help me.
Winning is the exact same way, though, because if you draw it when you're winning, you don't have the time to build up to the counters to get those extra damage chipped in.
You already did that. You have the damage. You need to push through.
And so you'd really rather have anything else that can actually just help your game plan, like, just keep going. I'd say if you draw it, it's not good if you're winning. If you got to winning because you had it out, it could be really good, because that could be, +10/+10 if you have a lot of little drops and you have a giant board. Mm-hmm. But if you're drawing it when you're winning, forget about it. You could do better.
Yeah, and if you're losing, it's worse than a sack of potatoes. Maxfield.com is actually way better than a sack of potatoes because you can take all the cards that you have in person and then shuffle them together and build a deck online based on those cards. And then Moxfield will be an easy way to look at the cards without having to physically be near the cards that you own.
You can also just mouse over the cards and read them and see if they are win more. If they are just saying you have to wait 10 turns to get a really good effect, might not be good. And Moxfield, you can just press remove really easily.
Yeah, Alt-2, baby. Remove that card. Another thing, if you wanted to check and do this test on your cards, you could enter custom tags on your Moxfield deck and say, this is a developing card, this is a parity card, this is a winning card. Or maybe you scroll across a card and you realize, this doesn't do any of those quadrants. And then you hit the Alt-2.
Moxfield is a great place to build your deck, so go check it out. The next card that's in a ton of decks is Second Harvest. It's 4 mana for an instant, and you double the tokens that you already have. In the developing phase, this is not good, considering you probably don't have that many tokens in the first 5 turns. So at best, you're paying 4 mana to maybe get a couple clues, a couple treasures, and maybe like 2 1/1s? That's an awful rate.
I can't even imagine a board state where in the first 5 turns, you make more than 4 tokens with this. I also think most people could agree that making 4 or less tokens with this is pretty bad, and you're not going to cast the card if that's what it does.
I would completely agree. I wouldn't cast this if I had 4 treasures. Like, oh, so I'm even now? What now?
Right. Hopefully regret. I don't know. But at parity, when you're building up and there's this big stall out, hey, you slam a Second Harvest, now your board is twice as big. You're probably playing a tokens deck. It's twice as big now. That's great. But someone fires off that board wipe and you go, huh, or you have Second Harvest in your hand that you haven't played yet, it kind of suddenly becomes not in your hand, and you just mulligan in the middle of the game.
That's just a dead card at that point. Obviously, with winning, if you have a winning board state, it's going to be amazing. If you have 40 treasures and you double it to 80 for 4 mana, that's amazing. But
I think, yeah, more so than almost every other card on this list, this will slam the door. You have 16 tokens, and you say, if the game will continue this way, I will win. This is how you continue it. Double it.
This is truly the winning more card. And with losing, again, if you have a dead board and just nothing on it, maybe a couple map tokens or something, this isn't worth the 4 mana that you're going to spend on it.
Yeah, you'll have to spend mana to start catching up, but you're behind at this spell now, and it really will just mostly be negatively spinning your wheels. Next, it's a big beefy dragon. It is the beefiest of dragons, pretty much. It's Utvara Hellkite. 8 mana for a dragon. When you attack with a dragon, you get a 6/6 dragon. So the ideal board state for this, we'll just start off with that, and then we'll go through the quadrants. The ideal board state with this is to play Utvara Hellkite, attack with 2 or 3 dragons, create 2 or 3 dragons, and then say, next turn's going to be rough for you, my friend.
I think that's where the shine of this card comes through. If people play it, they're like, wow, I can attack and then also keep up big beefy blockers and the next turn do the same thing but with more attacks and dealing out more damage. It sounds really good in theory, but the mana investment in this is really, really high. It's, 8 or 9 mana, basically?
High enough that we can pretty much skip the developing phase. This doesn't exist during the developing phase of the game. What about parity? If you've all are kind of sitting around, this will make dragons. What do you think?
It will make dragons, and you can really push through damage if there's a complete board stall. But if the board just got wiped, this isn't the first thing I want to see thrown down.
If I have to start rebuilding with this, I might just not cast it. I don't know. I would not feel safe casting this if I'm not going to get any dragons the same turn.
Yeah, me either, considering it doesn't have haste itself, so it's just you wait until I untap to attack with this if it's the first dragon down, and then I'll get 1 more, and that's a bad rate. Winning, obviously, it's going to be really, really good, considering 6 dragons turns to 12, turns to 24. That's that's the dream state that everyone wants.
That's what you want. I still have my problems with this card are that even in that situation, I don't know how long I want to wait for the dragons, because if I attack with 3 dragons, I feel like I'm already in a pretty good spot. I just dealt at least 15 damage to somebody. And then this says, okay, well, now you get 3 more dragons. That next turn, instead of dealing 15 damage, you'll deal 30 damage. But to me, it's just a little bit of waiting. But obviously, those numbers are there. You will eventually double and quadruple or whatever your dragon damage count, and that's good. And sometimes this will win you the game right away if you have like a Scourge of Valkus out or Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah, it could be really good. Yeah, a Warstorm Surge type effect. It definitely shines in those decks. But if you're losing and you have no board, this isn't what I want to see. I want to just have something to catch up with the rest of the board. Maybe a board wipe, maybe some removal, maybe something that gains me 1,000 life. I don't know, but it's not this.
It ain't this. We got to go to our next card, which is the Magic Mirror. What does the Magic Mirror do?
The Magic Mirror is 9 mana, but it costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. You have no max hand size at the beginning of your upkeep. It's another counter type deal. You put a counter on it, then draw a card for each counter on it. You're not playing this in the first 5 turns. You don't have 9 mana to spend, and you don't have the instants and sorceries in the graveyard. And if you do have like 5 in the graveyard, you don't want to spend 4 mana on this in the beginning.
I mean, I would be happy to in the very beginning, because it's like a Phyrexian Arena that's amped up to 100. I just don't think it's possible. There's really not too many draws I can imagine where I get 6 instant and sorcery spells in my graveyard and play this on turn 3 or even turn 4. It's a hard ask. So we're gonna say it's bad in the developing stages. At parity, when we're all just farting around and messing around after a board wipe or this board is clogged, this card's great. This card's really, really good. It'll say, all right, draw 1, now draw 2, now draw 3. And unlike some of the other building up with counters over time cards, this is pretty good as soon as you hit 2, because the cost of the card is probably like 2 or like 3, 4, or 5 mana. So it's sort of easy to get down after the developing stages, and it's not hard to imagine a situation where the board gets wiped, you untap with this, and you draw 2 cards. That's pretty good. That's kind of where this thing is supposed to go.
I just really hate waiting for counters on things, because if you don't have those proliferate synergies, there's so much removal running around rampant in Commander. There's so many people who can affect your board state, and the fact is that things can get swept up really easily. So I just really hate playing these types of cards in general. I guess in parity it could be good if it's sitting around and you get to that turn, but if my graveyard gets exiled or something with the board wipe, farewell type deal.
Everything is through the context of farewell. We should have made a farewell square.
Well, I'm just saying it's one of the most played board wipes nowadays, and because of the power creep, things like this that are more mana get less effective as the game just kind of progresses and the power creep goes higher.
I don't want to call this a high mana card. It's a high mana card at the beginning of the game, but as the game goes on, as soon as you hit like turn 6 or 7, it's probably a 4 mana card. But if there's a lot of graveyard hate, sure, this will definitely be harder. But this can take over the game by itself, so it has that aspect for winning. And it has that value for parity. When you're losing, I will say, all the cards on this list have been bad when you're losing. This might be one of the better ones because if you're not immediately dead, it will help you see extra cards, and seeing extra cards is one of the ways to catch up in the game, and this doesn't cost that much mana. So at least this is maybe the best on the list when you're losing.
It's definitely, I'd say it's the best on the list
Still
if you're
bad,
losing.
but yeah.
Because you don't need a board to trigger or whatever, you just have to wait. But, if you have to wait a turn to get just one card, and this is what I draw when I'm losing and I have one turn to live, that's not what I want to see.
Right, exactly. But if I say that I could change the text of all the other cards on this list to be 3 mana, draw a card next turn, I would do it in a heartbeat when I top deck it in a losing position.
I'd agree too. If it's one more card that helps me win, I'm happy to look at it.
Yeah, so just think about how wide is your window to close the game when you're actually winning. Generally, it's not that wide, so these cards will make you wait forever, and you think about drawing them when you're ahead, which in some world would be like the best scenario. It still sucks. I just would caution a second look at these cards, and maybe we'll do a video in the future that's going over the cards that have the biggest spread, that are the most good in the most places for replacements to these cards. But these are definitely ones we would think your deck's going to get better if you cut them.
But if you want to talk about winning and winning more in general, and not just with cards that just don't help when you're losing, why don't you check out the most explosive commanders right about here.